In the tractor collecting world, the understanding is that John Deere made the first steel plow, thus making the American prairie able to be farmed without hassle and allowed homesteaders to be more prosperous. But was he really the one that made the plow? Was he really the lone blacksmith working day and night to create it? Or is this just overstated marketing by Deere to make itself look good as it looked back on its past and its founder? To find out, we need to look at how John Deere got on his feet and why the plows were so revolutionary. In the late 1700s, farm tools were pretty much the same as you would find if you dug up the volcanic ash around Pompeii. If anything, the Roman tools were more refined than their 1800-year-old newer counterparts. Essentially, even up to our second fight for freedom in 1812, farmers were using a stick with an iron point for working ground. Not at all designed for turning ground, just enough to scratch the surface. Some used wood panels to make a mouldboard, but the shape was not good or smooth, and they used an iron point for a share. This combination held on to the prairie soils, and it took a lot of power to pull them, even in eastern soils. At the start of the 1800s, though, several people began to improve on the design. One of which was the most innovative farmer in American history at that point, Thomas Jefferson. While a statesman, he was what we would probably consider today a gentleman farmer. A man who may not rely totally on his farm as a means of survival, but cared greatly for it. We all know he experimented with his crops. He brought over many different items from Europe to try to grow here. And he was basically a man just obsessed with agriculture. It was kind of his way of getting rid of the stress of running the country and being one of the founding fathers. Jefferson worked on design and curves for how a mouldboard should be and how to turn the soil under easier. But with all his other work, he never pursued this in earnest, and as such, never got on with making one. Another at the time was Charles Newbold of New Jersey. He patented a cast iron plow in 1797. But, like many new inventions, people were leery of it, and the cost may have been too great, so it was not a commercial success. In 1807, David Peacock received his first patent for a plow, but was sued by Newbold in what was the first patent case concerning a mouldboard plow design. In 1814, Jethro Wood of New York received his first patent for a multi-piece mouldboard, using 3 parts, in order to make the repairs easier and cheaper for the farmer. Woods unfortunately spent much of his income trying to protect his patents, but by this time the technology was in use and farmers were buying the cast iron plows. But there was still the problem: cast iron. Now, moving on to the steel plow, the most popular story from John Deere is that John Deere had fallen on bad times in Vermont and was looking for greener pastures and moved west. He arrived in Grand Tour, he set up a shop, and worked on making shovels and pitchforks until he was working on the sawmill in town and he seen a polished steel saw blade laying there. Now, he took the blade home and spent day and night forging it and created a polished cast steel plow. Again, farmers were skeptical, but they could not believe the performance, and everyone lined up to buy them. Now, that is the story, the lone blacksmith working at night, but also, it's not known by many that he had a partner, Leonard Andrus. Leonard Andrus was a man of vision, given how many different businesses he was involved in politics. He moved west and was one of the original settlers of Grand Tour, so called because the river made a sharp bend of about 180 degrees. As the founder, he was involved in almost every industry and served in government his whole life. In 1835, he teamed up with Flint and Walker on a stage line that they had started. In 1836, he was one of 6 men who set up a business called the Hydraulic Company, which went on to build a dam, sawmill, and race, the first grist mill. They really began to improve Grand Tour in 1837. This is also the same year when John Deere came to town. So now we get into a little bit of the discussion over who was first with the plow and who made it. We've established the Deere story already of the lone blacksmith with vision, and we know that John Deere was working with Andrus on other projects since he was in the town. When you're starting off the town, you have the one blacksmith. He is a very busy man and well known by everybody and used by everybody. It is possible that Deere seen the broken bandsaw blade, Not a circular saw blade like people envision. It was a bandsaw. But it's possible that he seen the blade and thought to use it. Now, he was in pretty bad financial shape when he arrived, and he used broken parts from Andrus's mill, and Andrus had the operating capital to make a company happen. So, yes, John Deere probably made the plow, but he wouldn't be able to market them without Leonard Andrus's help. So what happened to Leonard and John? Well, they created a company, Deere and Andrus Company. They got up to around 40 plows a year for a time. They had on a partner, Robert Tate. In 1848, John Deere decided to leave for Moline, Illinois because the railroad was going to skip Grand Detour and go there, and he felt the railroad was important to business growth. He bought out Andrus's interest, and him and Robert Tate moved to Moline. Later on, Deere and Tate would bring in John Gould to handle the books for them, and the company became known as Deere, Tate, and Gould, originally called the Moline Plow Works. Deere was the figurehead, Tate was the shop manager, and Gould was the bookkeeper. However, this difference in status led to Gould and Tate leaving in 1851, with Tate starting his own business with a non-compete clause with John Deere. However, in 1856, Tate partnered with Charles Buford to create the Buford and Tate Partnership with a new factory in Rock Island directed to compete with John Deere. However, despite all this, Deere and Tate stayed friends the whole time. Even later in life, they would laugh and joke about the old days, and they were pretty close friends from all accounts. Now, while this was going on, Andrus kept running his new company, the Grand Detour Plow Company, and they stayed in business until 1919 with various partners, when it was purchased by J.I. Case. Now, even the advertising between these companies was similar. I guess that comes from starting off in the same workshop and having the same plow. You just kind of keep improving it, but yet it's still at its core the same thing. Others would continue to improve the plow. The most prominent of these was James Oliver, who in 1868 developed the chilling process, where the face of the mouldboard was chilled faster than the backside, so it was harder and smoother than the backside, which was more flexible and gave support to the face side of the blade. John Lane also developed a soft center plow. I guess that would be kind of like a Damascus, where it has a softer metal and a harder metal together, and it helps with a spring effect, which makes it very strong. But irregardless, at the end of the day, I still think John Deere does deserve most of the credit for the plow because of his design and the material. I also think that it's important to show everybody how many other people were involved in improving the plow. I mean, you go to plow days today, people talk about the International, the Oliver, and so forth, but they all started from here. And I do feel that Leonard Andrus deserves a lot of credit too. How many people can say that they helped build a town? I hope you guys enjoyed this. I am looking to do more of these in the future. I believe my next one I will work on a tractor company and how they got to where they are, or what actually happened to them and if they stayed in business. So stay tuned, and I hope you have a good day.